we're gonna, oh, no, spoilers, 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 can't see anything. You didn't see anything. Okay, we're at 8:30. I'm meant to give ourselves a few seconds, so I'm gonna wait to see if anybody pops on and for this to load up, because it does that. So just giving ourselves an extra minute to kind of get started. So thank you guys for your patience. Spoilers. Okay, it's catching up. It's catching up. Goodness. You'd think after doing this for quote unquote so long, I would have it like down to routine, but there's always something in the day that'll make me go, hey, you forgot to do a thing. Yes, I did. Absolutely, yes, I did. Nobody's perfect, and that's all right. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a nice, well, at least over here, an official second day of summer. Summer started, so it's also going to get pretty hot, so I hope you guys stay cool, drink water, wear sunscreen, all that jazz, as needed if you're going outside. Hopefully you guys have seen a lot of really interesting bird activity. Some of my favorites during the summertime are definitely the wood thrush that are by my house, as well as the barn swallows that I see over by the store, which is always super exciting. So if you feel like sharing, feel free to list the favorite birds you see in the summertime in the comments as well. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Sorry I was a little late popping up on the live stream, but we're gonna go ahead and just jump right into it. So good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. My name is Jolene. I'm a certified songbird feeding specialist with Wild Birds Unlimited of Concord, and today we're going to be talking about common grackles, which should be a lot of fun in my opinion. If you've never dealt with grackles before, you're in for a trip. If you have dealt with grackles before, you probably have a very strong opinion, whether it's good or bad, which is totally fine. Whether or not you like them or dislike them or constantly get frustrated, we're going to talk about all the good, the bad, the questionable about the grackles, how to kind of attract them to your yard or how to repel them from the yard, best practices to kind of do that, and we're going to talk about everything in between. So if you guys have any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop a comment. I'll do my best to answer when I can. It might be after the presentation, but I'll definitely be on the lookout there. Good morning. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. So to get started, oh my goodness, common grackles are a part of the family Icteridae. We have mentioned this family before in previous presentations, such as those with the cowbirds and the orioles, because these birds are all a part of the same family. They are also closely related to blackbirds, bobolinks, and meadowlarks as well. Common grackles themselves prefer more open habitats. So you're going to see that they prefer areas like suburbs, parks, agricultural fields. They will also take advantage of some slightly marshy areas or areas that have like ponds right by open woodlands too. You will find that areas that kind of have a mixed batch, like so for example, my neighborhood, the front section of it is very open, while the farther back portion where I live is very wooded, and we don't get as much grackle activity as the neighbors over in the front of the area. I do see them fly overhead occasionally, but they don't often visit my yard. Common grackles are considered a partial migrant, so they might migrate a little bit here and there. Some do, some don't, and they don't go very far if they do. When we look at their range map down in the right-hand side, you'll see that the purple area, so some of the Midwest and the eastern portions of the U.S., is kind of where they are year-round. So North Carolina is in that year-round range. Oftentimes, a lot of people in the Piedmont area, especially in our area, they get a lot of grackle activity in the summertime during breeding season, and then oftentimes as we get closer to fall or winter, it slows down because they shift to a different location. In the orange section here that goes all the way up into Canada and farther parts of like the Midwest in the US is their breeding range or their summer range. So they actually push out a little bit farther when the weather's warmer, and as we go back into the wintertime, they pull back into that year-round range. There is a very small sliver of wintering range in this blue right here that can be found in some portions of Texas as well. When it comes to identifying grackles, overall, once you know what to look for, it's very straightforward, but oftentimes many people confuse these birds with crows. So it's not uncommon for me to talk with customers and say that they have a lot of crows in their yard when it's actually some grackles. Grackles themselves can have a little bit of a similar shape to crows in some ways. For example, they've got that kind of flatter head. However, from there, it kind of varies. They are a large blackbird compared to the size of blackbirds in general, but crows are a little bit larger, so they are a bit smaller than crows. Their bill is a little bit more curved compared to a crow's kind of broader, straighter bill. So there is a differentiation there. Grackles do have oh goodness, they have some longer legs as well and a long V-shaped tail. So if you see them in flight, crows often have kind of that nice rounded edge of a tail, while grackles have a very thin, pointed V-shaped tail. So their center tail feathers are a little bit longer than the outer tail feathers. When it comes to their coloration, this can vary depending on how you see the grackles. These birds are very iridescent, which means unlike other birds like cardinals who have to eat certain foods to get the red pigmentation that they do, grackles' coloration is built into the structure of the feathers. And depending on how they turn or how you look at them, their coloration can change slightly. So you might see blue feathers or black feathers or purple feathers depending on what angle you're viewing them from. So grackles in general have a blue head, so it usually goes right down to their neck. It's this nice kind of blue coloration here. From there, their body is overall a bronze kind of color. Depending on where you live, Florida does have a kind of my goodness, a subspecies of grackle where they have more of a purple coloration on the body, so that can vary slightly. Females in general are a little bit less glossy or colorful than the males, and then in general, grackles have a bright golden eye, which crows definitely do not have. Other birds can, so it depends on who you're trying to identify, but it can make identification a lot easier when you notice that eye as well. When it comes to their song and call, they're also pretty distinctive, which can be kind of fun. I have found that their song is very simple, but it kind of sounds like a rusty gate opening or a rusty gate hinge. So what that sounds like is this. So it's a very short thing, but you can kind of imagine when you're opening something metal. Kind of got that buzzy, raspy aspect to it. And then their call is also very simple. It's kind of deeper than like some songbirds like chip. So it kind of gives some distinction there as well. It's more like a chup or a rasp. So very simple in comparison as well. Now, there are some other species of grackles out there, which I always find fun. There is the great-tailed grackle and the boat-tailed grackle. The great-tailed grackle, both of these I'm pretty sure have longer, bigger tails than our common grackle, but the great-tailed grackle can be found more out west and in the Midwest. Over time, there was a portion where the great-tailed grackles and the common grackles were kind of both in Texas, and they both kind of still are, but there was kind of competition as to who was doing better, and the great-tailed grackles did kind of supersede a lot of the common grackle activity in certain locations. So usually you could find them more out west. The boat-tailed grackle can be found in the eastern section of the U.S., and they can also be found on the coast. So if you do travel to North Carolina's coast, you can potentially see a boat-tailed grackle as well. When it comes to their diet, these birds are omnivorous, so they take advantage of a lot of different things. If you've ever seen grackles, they can do pretty well in cities and human populations too, so they could go for anything from insects to amphibians to crustaceans. They are very commonly found in agricultural areas, so they also take advantage of corn, rice, sunflower, peanuts, and they're also a huge fan of acorns. They can also take advantage of garbage, so sometimes if you have a large population of grackles in your area, it cannot be uncommon to find them in like the dumpster or certain areas there because they know how to look for that kind of food. And occasionally they do sometimes raid nests and occasionally go for nestlings. Something that I find very interesting about the grackle is kind of the different strategies it uses to forage, one of which is that they have an adaptation on the upper part of their bill, where on the inside of it they have kind of a protrusion that faces downwards called kind of like a hard keel that basically allows them to saw certain things open depending on how they're holding onto a food item. So in this case, it's not the best video, but you can kind of get some of an idea of how this goes. Is when they're, for example, working on an acorn. What they'll kind of do is they'll kind of grind down on like one portion of the acorn and kind of rotate it until they're able to kind of notch it well enough that they can crack it open. So there is kind of that repeated shifting behavior when they're kind of going for certain seeds. Now, unlike cardinals, who can crack open a heavy seed like nobody's business, these guys require a little bit of effort on their part before they can open some of those. Along with that, these guys also implement a gaping foraging behavior. Again, one of those things where the video doesn't show a good example of this. You can often see this behavior in starlings and other things as well. But I found it to be an interesting video, so I'm sharing it anyways. So one thing that Grackles will implement is a gaping behavior. This is essentially when they put their beak into substrate, whether it's grass or other things there, and then open their bill as they're kind of looking through that substrate. What they're doing is exposing any potential insect activity or food items that they can access that wasn't visible before. In this case, there is a centipede that this guy really isn't keen on, but keeps ending up finding anyways. So sometimes you might notice as they're flicking through, they might leave their beak open. So keep an eye on that if you ever notice Grackles foraging with this strategy, or if you notice starlings, they kind of implement the same move. And sometimes they also imitate thrashers as well, where they'll move a lot of leaf litter in order to get some good visibility on food that they're going for, too. And he got something. Good for him. Okay. Oftentimes, we kind of talked about how these guys have longer legs. They are primarily ground foragers, so they can, again, take advantage of a variety of habitats. We can kind of see in this picture, they're taking advantage of that wet kind of marshy area or on the coasts, where they can actually take advantage of catching fish and other things. Again, we've talked about those agricultural areas they like to visit, so it's not uncommon for Grackles to follow farmers that are plowing their fields, because when those plows pass through, it exposes a lot of insect activity that those Grackles can take advantage of. Grackles also have a variety of interesting behaviors, one of which is called anting. Anting is a maintenance behavior that not every bird uses, so Grackles, crows, and some others will kind of utilize this. This is a type of behavior where basically these birds will find kind of like an anthill or a lot of ant activity and find a way to get the ants to crawl all over them. So whether they kind of agitate the ants first or grab some and kind of put them on their feathers, basically they're allowing the ants to crawl all over their feathers because those ants secrete a formic acid that helps kill parasites. Now, Grackles have also been shown to utilize walnut juice, lemons or limes, and marigold in this kind of same similar process. So birds can recognize when they need a little bit of assistance in order to get rid of any potential parasites. Grackles are also a very social species. Where you find one, it is not uncommon to find another, or 10, or 20. And oftentimes you can find with very social species, they have a variety of displays and behaviors that you wouldn't normally see amongst those that prefer to have a little bit more space in between them. So two such displays, one of which is the bill up display, which is one of my favorites, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of it, where essentially it's a male versus male behavior, where they lift their bill up and kind of face each other, and they won't stop until one kind of concedes sometimes, but it basically helps show off their plumage and tries to show who's the dominant male. Another type of display is the song spread display. This can happen between males and females, so either gender can do it. Oftentimes, let's see. Oh, okay, fun. So oftentimes, when they perform these displays, you'll see that the bird will kind of hunch forward, kind of like the one on the left here. They'll kind of raise and move out their tail feathers, and they'll also show their wings too. Let me see. Okay, so somebody posted a good question. Okay, so Monica said she loves their iridescence. I agree. I love the Grackles iridescence. They're very gorgeous birds. And they said also, when I'm in range of boat-tailed Grackles, what is the behavior where they just stare directly above? I don't know if that's the bill up display. You'll have to see if that looks similar to the videos I'm going to show you in a second. If not, I'll have to double check because I know that boat-tailed Grackles can have a little bit of a different behavior set sometimes than common Grackles too. So I would say maybe the bill up display, but we're going to take a look, see if that looks familiar, and if not, I'll have to double check and get back to you there as well. So, two of which I'm going to leave the volume. I'll leave the volume on for this one. This is an example of that kind of, oh my goodness, song spread display. So just one sec here. So again, essentially they'll kind of move, they'll pick them, and then they'll puff out their feathers. He's gonna do it. Yep, so it kind of shows off that iridescence and just their feathers in general. And then, if you've never seen Cornell Lab, they have a lot of different live stream cameras as well. So one of them is at the lab specifically in Ithaca, New York. And this one is always active 24/7 stream. And they have a lot of cool highlights that they post to YouTube as well. The live stream you can get from YouTube or allaboutbirds.org. It has a lot of fun stuff. So one of the highlights they had did have the Grackles implementing both of the displays that we talked about. So you could see when two Grackles landed here, they immediately started that kind of bill up display where their bills are facing straight up. Not only that, you'll have one kind of perform that song spread display before the other tries to compete as well. You can also see a good form of that iridescence on their backs and how that coloration can shift depending on which way they're viewing. So really interesting and unique behaviors. I never get tired of them. And you can see here that one of them eventually wins and the other one flies off for now. But you know he'll be back later as well. So hopefully that was kind of the display you were thinking of, Monica. That's the one I'm assuming it is, but I don't know if there's another style that maybe I'm not certain of as well. A lot of these displays can sometimes be more intense in early nesting season. So kind of as the season goes on, you may see less of these as there's less of a need to kind of stake out certain territory and focus on that too. Now, when it comes to courtship, oftentimes these guys will get started relatively early in the season to kind of figure out who's pairing off with who. They are often monogamous through breeding season, so often you have a male and female that stick together that season. Then usually they may separate through the wintertime and they may pick a different partner for the next season. Occasionally, these birds have been reported to be polygynous, where one male will mate with multiple females. Oftentimes, the pairs form as soon as the females arrive in the area, and they finish pairing off in May, if not sooner. Let's see. Perfect. I've seen them doing it while perched. Yes, that's fun. Yeah, they'll definitely kind of so Monica said I've seen them doing it while perched on a power line. Yeah, you'd be surprised where you see them doing those behaviors. Anytime they feel like ready to be like, no, this is my space, they will definitely initiate those behaviors, which is fun. But in regards to different kinds of courtship behaviors, they do take advantage of courtship flights. So there's a few different styles. Because again, these birds can be so busy, it's really fun to kind of see if you can pick these out. So there's 3 different strategies, one of which is you have a group of males flying behind a slow flying female. So kind of as they're determining who will pair off with who. You can have a high-speed chase between one male and a female. And then you can also have a male and a female flying slowly side by side. So often those two are paired off for the season. But they've also just got unique behaviors in flight. So you never know what you can keep an eye out for as well. When they have paired off for the season, nesting is often anywhere from March through July. So again, depends on when they get started. They can nest in loose colonies. So unlike some birds, for example, are bluebirds who love their space and don't want to see another bluebird within at least sometimes 100 feet of their nest or farther. These guys can have loose colonies where they're all right if another grackle has nested in a certain area closer to them. Oftentimes, females will choose the site and build the nest. Males can often assist, and they do help with repairs. Usually the locations that they look for are areas with coniferous trees, so lots of different pines, and they often can build it near water. This is because they occasionally do use mud as a resource for their nests, too. Now, it is also not uncommon for these birds to kind of be a certain portion through making their nest, and then look at it and go, you know what? I don't like this spot. I want to pick somewhere else. And they do. So that's why it can take anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks in order to complete their nest in general. So you may find that there's a half-completed nest they were working on and they just decided to pick somewhere else. Oftentimes their nests are kind of bulky cup nests because these birds are a little bit on like the kind of larger side. So you're going to have a slightly larger nest with anything from twigs, leaves, and grasses. And again, because these birds are capable of utilizing more human areas or human habitated areas, however you say that. Gosh, I'm not the one to know. They'll utilize pieces of paper, string, cloth, and corn husks too, because again, we know they also like those agricultural areas as well. They often have that outer piece, they reinforce it with mud, and then they often use horsehair or fine grasses to kind of set up that softer inner side as well. Now, when these birds finish building their nests, they often just have one brood, but in the event something happens to the first brood, they will build a second one as well, or they'll have a second brood as well. Each brood can have anywhere from 1 to 7 eggs, so it just depends on the season and how they're doing, and 1 egg is laid per day. When they finish laying all their eggs, that's when they'll start to incubate them. So anywhere from 11 to 15 days before they hatch. And when they do hatch, they are all trishul young. So you can see that they don't have a lot of feathers, and oftentimes they're a bit smaller than this. So this is after maybe like a few days of hatching. But oftentimes they'll be very pink, they'll be blind, they'll require a lot of parental care as well too as they continue to get older. It'll be about another 10 to 17 days before these birds are officially able to fledge and kind of leave the nest as well. Now, something that's fun about grackles is that they are considered a cowbird host species. So for those that do not know, brown-headed cowbirds are parasitic nesters, which means they lay their eggs in other birds' nest for that other bird to take care of that cowbird young and their own young. This can be detrimental to some species where maybe the cowbird young is able to push out the original young of that nest and potentially kill them or harm them. And the cowbird young are able to beg sometimes very aggressively in comparison to other species. So oftentimes that that parent bird or that host bird will kind of continue feeding that cowbird thinking it's their own young. In some cases, this can be detrimental. In other cases, birds have figured out to sometimes evict the cowbird egg, abandon the nest entirely, and start building a new one. And they have formed strategies to kind of counteract that parasitization. With grackles, they actually can coexist with the cowbird in their nest. Oftentimes, the grackle young have a fast enough growth that they're able to kind of do just as well as that cowbird young, along with their size too. So that's always a fun thing, is to know who does well, who doesn't. So they have no problem with any cowbirds that are potentially hosted in that nest as well. Now, when it comes to fledging, I will say these birds are not always their prettiest. So in this center image here, you're going to see that sometimes grackle young haven't quite gotten all their feathers together. So you can kind of have those very bald eyes and that bald kind of beak at the end of it. So you can still have a patch of pink even though these birds have fledged. They will get those feathers in, just not right away. So you have the lack of facial feathers, and you also have a very short tail feather. The short tail feather and kind of short wing feathers are very common signs of like a fledgling that's in the area. They're not going to stay in the nest usually. We can assume that the parents are nearby taking care of them, but this is just that portion where they're starting to build up those flight muscles, and they're kind of sometimes following the parents around in order to continue getting fed. So in that fledgling phase, it's okay to leave them to do their thing as well. As they get a little bit older, they'll become that juvenile phase. This is when they have all of their feathers. Their tails have kind of continued and finalized growing out. But you'll notice as they look very similar to the adults, they don't have that nice iridescence yet. So juveniles often look the exact same as the parents, except those nice shiny feathers have not kicked in yet. So they're still waiting for that final molt to get all of their adult plumage. Oftentimes, any of that molting can occur in July through October. So you might even notice some patchy feathers, some that are iridescent and some that are still that kind of dull brown, which is really interesting. Oftentimes, once the young are old enough, they join a lot of the roosting flocks in July. And once nesting season is out, they often have a lot of foraging flocks, which if you've ever seen grackles in general, they are very good at flocking. It has been estimated that sometimes you can have 1 million individuals in like very large flocks as well. Common grackle flocks can be referred to as plagues, so that can kind of give you an idea of how many you can have at one time. Flocks are also very helpful in general because they do provide protection against predators. And just to show you how crazy this can be sometimes, because this is not always something that you can witness, definitely similar to something like in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, for sure. But essentially, this flocking behavior can be very helpful for a few different things. One of which is it gives you more eyes to figure out where the best food resources are. So even if they do eat through some of those resources faster, they can look for a variety of new resources more quickly. Not only that, but it can provide protection against predators. When they are trying to focus on one individual at a time, it can be very complicated to figure out which one it is when they all kind of scatter like that, for sure. Not only that, but if they participate in any mobbing strategies, certainly certain predators don't want to be caught up in a horde of grackles trying to figure that stuff out as well. Now, if you've ever been to Texas, I will say I passed through there once, and I know there's records of those great-tailed grackle flocks that you can also get where it's just grackles for miles. Everywhere you look is a grackle. So it's definitely one of those things where these behaviors, you can see a lot of these birds at one time. And that's not something you can see with every songbird, that's for sure. Grackles are considered one of the most successful and widespread species in North America, which is not an easy thing to do. Not only that, grackles are the only native species that we have that has found to be successful in urban areas. So if we think about pigeons or rock doves or house sparrows, these are birds that were both introduced from other places. Rock pigeons are a naturalized species pretty much, while house sparrows still cause a lot of issues with, a lot of our native birds like bluebirds. Same can be said for starlings, who also try and take advantage of urban areas. They are also a non-native species and can cause a lot of harm. So for grackles themselves to be able to compete with some of these other birds, it's a very impressive situation. I will say over the years, the reason that their population has increased so well is, again, due to a few things. One of which, we've kind of removed a lot of forested areas as we've continued to grow different cities and things like that. So that is something that is a little bit more partial to the common grackles habitat in general and their range. And not only that, the eastern population of grackles has increased over the year due to mechanical harvesting of crops. So because we now have a routine of, and this is over a period of many, many years, because there's a routine of when crops are harvested, and oftentimes it leaves a lot of different food kind of on the ground as things go. Grackles will often take advantage of those agricultural fields after foods have been harvested because that's a lot of easy resources there. So it actually has improved their overwinter survival and kind of helped their population in general. Now, of course, some negative downsides to this is that they can be considered an economically significant pest because we talked about the fact that they go for corn, rice, sunflower, different things like that. So they can cause a lot of damage. Goodness, thousands of dollars, which I don't have numbers for these things. They can cause a lot of damage to agricultural products as well. And while grackles are doing well in their own population, they are still protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So nobody can just kind of go out there and try and reduce their populations in any way. Oftentimes, attempts to reduce populations can affect other species in the same term. So it's very dangerous and a very delicate situation to address, especially when we want to make sure we still have these birds for a very long time to see. And if we've learned anything in history over time, if we just decided to go, oh, they don't need to be protected, populations can dwindle very carefully. So it's one of those situations that definitely needs to be observed, and I am not somebody that knows enough about one of those situations to kind of explain it further. But it's always interesting to see both the good and the questionable that can occur with any bird species in general. Now, when it comes to grackles in our neighborhoods, in our yards, and at the feeders, if you've ever dealt with grackles before, maybe you don't want to attract them, but for those that like a little bit chaos in their life, if you want to kind of see some common grackles, if you have bird feeders out and the grackles are nearby, they will find you. If you have a more wooded lot, they are probably not as interested. But if you are in a more open area and put those feeders out, they will definitely find you. There is no need to worry. Like I said, these birds are ground feeders, and they're also opportunistic. So they'll take a variety of food items, anything from sunflower, peanuts, corn, suet, fruit, mealworms. They will take advantage of all those types of things. Because they are a larger species, tray feeders can be a big option for them. In this case, tray feeders don't always hold as much capacity, but it is a very good thing to offer just for your ground feeders or to make larger birds more comfortable. Feeders that have larger perches. So, for example, the post kind of perches will be a lot smaller for these birds. If you have tube feeders that have multiple posts like this, sometimes you'll have your grackle set on the lower one and kind of go for the upper one too. So that can always be an interesting time there. So sometimes, yeah, you've got different options there as well. But you want to go for larger kind of U-shaped perches or tray feeders or hopper feeders that have those kind of larger perches in general. You can also scatter food on the ground. Again, they're ground feeders, so they have no problem accessing that as well too. A lot of times those larger flocks that you kind of saw in that in those previous videos will happen more in the winter time, kind of like I said. So depending on if you're looking for any of that, that'll be the time of year where you see that behavior. Now, if you're dealing with grackles and want to see less of them, which is also completely understandable, these birds can be very competitive at the feeders with other species, and sometimes they bully each other too, so it can get a little hectic before you're maybe even ready for it. Not only that, but they can eat through a lot of food very quickly, so budgeting is your friend, depending on if you're dealing with any of the grackles there. Methods to kind of reduce their activities at the feeders include, again, we kind of talked about those feeders with small perches, but if you have small perches, just having one level of them versus something that's tiered, so it's harder for them to access it. They will definitely still try to cling to and try with those feeders, so do not be surprised at their tenacity. Also, feeders that have the option of a cage to go around it can also be an option to reduce grackle activity. These types of cages should be 1.5 inches for each kind of square diameter opening. Basically, that makes it so anything smaller than a cardinal can go through. So bluebirds, wrens, downy woodpeckers, I know gray catbirds have been found to go through there sometimes. Finches, all that, those birds can go through there. Birds like grackles or starling cannot do so. When you're looking at these cages, you want to make sure they have a decently sized diameter, because if it is too close to the feeder in the center, sometimes your grackle can just stick his head in and still access that food without perching on the feeder. So definitely keep that in mind. You want something far enough that the grackle can't just like stick its head in there and access the feeder that way. Not only that, if maybe you'd have certain feeders but you can't make a cage to go around it, safflower is a great option to consider. Safflower is a three-sided, tough white shell that basically is something that the grackles cannot crack open with that keel on the center of their bill. This type of seed is great for your heavier seed eaters, so cardinals, house finches, chickadees, titmice, doves. They love safflower. That's not a problem. Birds such as grackles and starlings do not like safflower, along with insect eaters like bluebirds and wrens. They would not be as interested. So that is kind of one of those downsides. It depends on who your primary focus is and who you're trying to reduce activity with. Safflower can also be bitter to a squirrel's taste. So sometimes they still eat it, sometimes they don't. So definitely, if you're dealing with squirrels, you can also give this a shot to kind of see if that reduces their activity too. If you are trying to go with safflower, you can only use just safflower. You can't feed safflower in one feeder and no mess in another, because what will happen is those grackles will go to the no mess, they'll eat through that feeder first, and then they'll head over to the safflower and they'll go, oh, well, you know, there was food in that other feeder, so surely there's something in here. And they will continue to investigate until all the feeders are empty. And then sometimes you have a very messy yard, which can be very frustrating as well too. So when you do just safflower, the birds start to realize there's nothing in this feeder, there's nothing in that feeder, There is literally nothing for me to go for. Okay, I'm gonna head out, I'll check back later. And they do kind of reduce that activity through the season. Now you can do a mix of these things, and you can offer a feeder in a cage, have a really good blend in there, like the Nomas or Choice or Supreme or whichever. And then in an open feeder that's more exposed, you can offer that safflower, which is a good option for some of your larger birds, not the grackles, but you can still include like your cardinals and some other birds as well. So kind of keep that in mind as you're kind of figuring that out. And again, a lot of grackle activity is very busy in this area, heavily in like the summertime. You'll kind of have to keep track of when you notice that grackle activity during the year. So if you notice that they're starting to come through, switching to these options the earlier you can will make it so that they're less interested as the season goes on. So keep that in mind as you're kind of continuing to see what strategy works best for your yard as well. So hopefully some of that kind of made sense. I got a little lost in there somewhere. But there's a lot of interesting things about these birds in general. A lot of the photos and videos came from the Macaulay Library at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. All About Birds has great resources that are easy to access through here as well. And of course, we did talk about that live feeder camera, the Cornell Lab feeder cams, that you can see a lot of live stream birding activity as well too, which is fun. For those that are coming into the store today, or if you want to do a phone order as well, I have a coupon code for you. Mention the code Grackle at the register, and we can give you $5 off a purchase of $25 or more if you want to use that today only. There is a second viewing of this presentation at 11, so if you know somebody that's interested in checking this one out, you can send them this way. We'll also be moving this presentation over to YouTube as well. So if you know somebody that would be interested, they're not coming in the store and they don't have Facebook, feel free to offer that information to them as well too. So with that being said, that's all I got today. So honestly, we had a few of you in here. That's so awesome, because I know Grackles give mixed reviews. So I love talking about them in both the good and the bad sometimes. So thank you guys once again for tuning in. I think in July, we're taking a break because there's other fun stuff going on, but I will be back in August. That's how the months go. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a good one, and I will see you next time. Bye!